Hi, my name is Kalyan and welcome to The Finely Chopped. The Finely Chopped is my channel where I tell you about interesting stories from the world of food. One story which I tracked a couple of years back was the growth of Indian food and Indian food restaurants in London and how it's really exploding over there. One of the chefs who's really led the movement is Chef Atul Kochhar, who's won not one but 2 Michelin stars for the Indian food which he's dished out over there. Atul Kochhar has now come back to India and in Mumbai where he's opened a restaurant called NRI. So I'm going to catch up with him and figure out what's going to happen here. It's really funny, last night I was watching this movie, probably the last person to watch it, Burnt, and it was all about Michelin stars. And today I'm with Chef Atul Kochhar, who's won not one but 2 Michelin stars, and he was the first Indian chef to win a Michelin star. So how did it come about?
Well, I'm still wondering how did it come about, to be honest. I think Michelin stars are about consistency. It's about how you research your ingredient, how you believe in your tradition, and how you put flavors on the plate. It's all about that. But consistency is the key.
Well, consistency is fine, and if you are a regular chef doing a regular French cuisine, it works out. But what made it special for you is you also took Indian cuisine, a cuisine which people were not familiar with, and in a market like UK where Indian food meant cheap, balti food, and over there you got a Michelin star. So how did that work out?
I think it's about understanding the place, its agriculture, and also its demographics. And that's how most of the Michelin star places would work. Michelin stars could be anywhere in the world, but I think they believe in their own structure and they work with that. So in the UK, for first 5 or 6 years of my culinary career, I didn't have a Michelin star. And it was purely because I was just trying to understand that how things are grown here and how I can use that in my food. A lot of ingredients that I use are inherently not Indian.
Yeah.
And that makes it slightly difficult. It puts a question mark, especially on our own people, when Indians travel to the UK and say, you are selling us a sweet masala, which I don't like, because it's not their palate. But for a person who's living in the UK, who has eaten sweet all his life, sweet masala is slightly different flavor for him, but however, it's still the sweet.
And the Indian palate is so varied, so how do you pin on it? Because for Gujarati, a sweet masala will work. For a person from West Bengal, sweet masala would work to an extent. So how do you pin it down when it comes to Indian food?
What I call Indian food as an uncharted territory. We don't have a defined national cuisine. So while you work abroad, and I think that's a boon, to be honest, that while working abroad, I didn't have to worry about whether I'm making a Bengali food or a Gujarati food or a Tamilian food. I could use all the flavors that are part of my tradition suddenly up because I'm out of India. And I could use them to my benefit. So sometimes taking rajma and playing with mustard seed and curry leaf with rajma, I could do that. If I ever did that in India, I'll go to jail for that. So I prefer my way of working in the UK because there are no boundaries. I'm not bounded by the tribalism what we have here.
So chef, this entire issue of authenticity, how does it work then? Do people come and tell you this is not authentic Indian food, not traditional Indian food?
So there are 2 favorite subjects of mine, and I love to talk to people, and especially people like yourselves: authenticity and tradition. So when it comes to authenticity, it's a very big subject, and sometimes it's most unrelative subject, because whatever is authentic to me, it may not be to you, and vice versa. And if we ask our parents what's authentic to them, we might think together that it's really outdated. So it's a time bound, it's a time capsule thing where people feel that this is authentic to our particular period or era. Whereas tradition is something that has been carried forward from generations. So I have all the time in the world to follow the tradition, but not the authenticity, because I cannot define it, I can't pinpoint it. So tradition of using spices is what I believe in. And that's what I'm not willing to give up. Whether we had red kidney beans or white lima beans in our tradition or not, whether we ever ate wild boar or whether we had tradition of cutting an elephant, I don't know, I'm just being crazy here.
Well, we didn't have potatoes to start
with. We didn't have
or
potatoes.
Tomatoes or green chilies.
And chilies, absolutely.
Yeah.
Chiku and all those things have been brought in. So those parts have been brought in and slowly been brought into our tradition. But the ingredients have been brought over to our culture and our cuisine history for quite a long time by different visitors and also by invaders, you can say. But tradition of using spices have always been there. We have grown our spices and we use them in different ways in different parts of the country. And I think that's what is my strength. That's what I like doing. So I can cook anything with my spices as long as I understand the nature of the ingredient.
So as someone who's been an ambassador of the Indian food story, what is it that you've been trying to convey to the world about Indian food? Because, I mean, there are perceptions on Chinese food, Thai food, Mexican food, but is there a perception on Indian food? Or
I think the perception of Indian food is just beginning to get clear slowly. 20 years ago, it was pretty marred in my opinion. People just felt, especially I'm talking about the UK and I can say a little bit of Australia as well, the tradition of eating curry, not Indian food, curry was on the Friday night, they will go have 8 or 10 pints of lager and then hit the curry house. And whatever they were served, they just wanted really hot so that their minds get blown.
hot as in spicy, tikka.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that is slowly being changed in the UK. And I won't say that I'm the only one who has done it. My peer group, my group of chefs, we have worked together very hard over the last 15, 20 years to unravel that and say, guys, there are so many beautiful flavors and so many combinations created by the combination of spices and individual spices on its own to give dishes the character and also the authenticity in what we are doing with it now. So going back to authenticity, if I created a dish, let's say with venison, and I used a chocolate curry with that, if my venison was local, my tradition of using spices was there, and venison and chocolate always works together well. I've created a kind of new format there. It is authentic to that particular time when I'm cooking and when I have my peers accepting it and people enjoying it. But maybe 10 years later, when my son comes into the kitchen, he throws it out of the window, he says, that's boring, we're not going to do that, this is not authentic. And he will go back to do something else. That'll be his tradition, his tradition of using spices will continue, but his combinations might change and the authenticity might change.
So you're saying that it's an evolving
It's an ever-evolving game. Authenticity is an ever-evolving game and it changes from generation to generation.
So why did you decide to open a restaurant in India?
Because I've been coming here for quite many years, and in the initial years, I would say 5-6 years ago, I was so much into my mom and dad. I didn't want to start any other thing in India so that it would distract me away. I just wanted my parent time a lot. Family time. And I wanted my children to be in them.
And are they in Jamshedpur still?
My mom, now they have moved. My mom lives in Delhi. She lives between Delhi, Nasik and London. My dad passed away unfortunately in 2008. And that was the turning point. And I decided, okay, he was the main source of inspiration for me. He was the guy who would challenge me. He was the guy who would mentor me. He was the guy who taught me whatever I know today. So losing him was a big loss. And then I wanted another association with India. And food is the next big association apart from my mother. So I thought I can't let that go and I have to have it. And I've been keen and I've been learning because not working professionally here has taken me away from the real scene, to be honest. Coming and eating, I'm a tourist, to be honest. So to be able to learn again about my own country, my own motherland, its produce, its people, its cultures, it's a job.
And when you left India, you'd worked in a 5-star environment.
I
You
worked
used to work with the Oberoi.
Yes, I worked with the Oberoi hotels.
So when you're working in a standalone restaurant, it's a completely different...
It's a totally different ball game.
Yeah.
Albeit, we are in early few days of this restaurant, but the ethos are not very different than what we have in the UK. So the principles are same. The percentages might work from here to there, but they work exactly the same way. And I have been a standalone operator for quite some time now in the UK, so I'm not perturbed by that. I think I'm quite okay. I'm quite comfortable that I'm in a good space and I can manage.
And that's where the action is in India, is the standalone restaurants which are doing exciting stuff.
Absolutely. So last 4-5 years, I've been very keenly monitoring and learning from people like A.D. Singh, Riaz Amlani, who they both are great friends and mentors for me, to be honest. Great guys, amazing people. And what I love about India is we have not gone crazy on foreign brands. Yeah, like many other things we have gone crazy, but food we have not.
Yeah.
We have brought homegrown brands.
True.
And they're becoming bigger. Indian accent, bred in India, going to New York is a massive story. I love that fact. Yeah. I love that fact.
We're all very excited about it.
So hence, opening NRI is something that is for India. It's Indian food that's gone out of India. I wasn't going to come back and cook Indian food for my own people to show them this is how Indian food is cooked. That would be daft. That would be too pretentious of me to do that. But this is the food which belongs to our people who went abroad and evolved. So I'm bringing that evolved food back.
You're talking of Indian dishes which evolved. Like one dish which I really like, of course being Bengali, is the fish head curry in muthus, which is nothing like a Bengali macher muro diye dal. So would that be on the menu?
I wish I could bring that. You and me coming from East India, we would love that, wouldn't we? But we are in very sophisticated part of the country, that is Mumbai, and we have to come up with dishes which will be more acceptable. So I have dishes like Bunny Chow.
The South African one.
That is a South African one. It's a huge story around it. Caribbean goat curry. I have also got roti canai and kurma from Malaysia.
I once had roti canai for breakfast at Penang at a place called 24 Line Clear.
Isn't that beautiful?
Absolutely.
So
this is the Bunny Chow.
This is the Bunny Chow. We call it Durban Bunny Chow.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And the story goes that during the apartheid time, there was a Chinese guy who was selling different types of food, and Indians were not allowed to come to the front of the shop to sell them the bean curry he was making. He scooped out the loaf of bread, half-cut loaf of bread, poured the curry in, put some pickle on top, wrapped it in the paper, and gave it to them. And these poor field workers, they sat in the sugarcane field and started savoring on it. And they said, wow, this is amazing, because all the juices were soaked in the bread. You eat the bread first, and then you're eating the curry, and then again the leftover bread becomes even more juicier and nicer. And that's what happens. And I think we have just captured it really well. I was in Durban, and I was entertained by an Indian family, a South Indian, originally South Indian family, but they are very much South Africans. And they entertained me on this one, and I absolutely loved it.
And so are you supposed to eat the dish in its entirety, like at the end, like finish off the bread and everything?
Everything.
And you know, this bread crust reminds me a lot of Calcutta and the office para in BBD Bagh, where you'd get these loaves which would be of this size and would have exactly this sort of texture.
That's true.
And they'd put some butter, toasted, and sugar in that. And
that's
so it reminds me of the Calcutta office para bread as well.
And sometimes if you can have some malai on it.
Yeah.
I would love that.
and so which are the other dishes? Is this what, a banana?
This is because plantain is something which is very common in South Africa, and they eat plantain in different ways. They make curries.
And again Kerala over here.
And Kerala over here. So the idea is to eat the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah, you can cut it. You can be posh. You can use cutlery. There you go.
Yeah. So you can eat without worrying about creating a mess, because that's the thing about Indian food. Because when you're going to cut it, it's going to like go all over the plate, wouldn't it?
When you're eating, why worry about creating a mess? Let it be. Let's enjoy it. That's how I see it. But I think this is slightly cleaner dish, so to speak. It can be. It can be.
So why don't you?
Do you want me to do the honors?
Yeah.
Okay. So what you do is this: you keep aside.
Okay.
Okay, and you cut it from one side. So for cameras, I'll just turn it this way.
Sure.
So you cut it from one side like that, and open it. Yeah. And then you start eating a little bit of bread. But once you finish, you see all the juices are soaked. And that's the best part. That is the best part.
Absolutely. Like, even while growing up in Calcutta, like, you used to have chicken curry with toast and stuff like that, because making rotis wasn't that easy. And you'd look for the bread to get soaked.
That's it. That's it.
So, are you going to like source your ingredients locally?
Total. Yeah,
that's what makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. And my food.
I love the aroma which is coming of the curry leaves also, because nowadays when you get curry leaves, it's difficult to get the aroma nowadays, because the quality of produce is really.
That's true. What do you think? Too early.
My favorite part is the bread soaked in with the curry.
That's what I love about this whole dish.
And going a bit mushy.
That's it. That's it.
And the other thing which I really like is the strong taste of curry leaves which comes in, and which I think has something to do with your chefing prowess. Because typically what happens in India is that I think our produce is no longer that good, and the flavors are not vibrant, and often we tend to overcook it. So what was the sort of wizardry to get the curry leaf flavor out? Do you add it towards the end, or?
What we do is I personally prefer to add it with the whole spices right in the beginning. So when the temperature of the oil is just around 200 degrees centigrade, and when you throw in spices to extract the flavors, you just have to understand the nature and the character of the ingredient you're going to add. And then you add onions, and that's the time to add curry leaves.
Yeah.
A lot of people are in a hurry to add the curry leaves right in the beginning, and it extracts all the juices, and the flavors are actually very volatile, so they get evaporated very quickly. But if you add curry leaves with onions and saute them together, then the flavor lingers on and it stays within the curry. And that's the trick.
Yeah, and
It's a small trick, but it works.
yeah, but and that's an interesting trick, because I'm going to use that, because sometimes you just put it in the beginning and you don't get the flavors.
Yeah.
And even the consistency of the goat meat, it's like so.
I think the quality of
succulent.
goat is amazing. I think that's what it is. So what I have started doing after I came to India to open my restaurants, one thing I picked up very quickly, that the quality of ingredient and having it consistently would be a challenge.
Yeah.
So we asked a friend to loan us. So we are leasing about 8 acres of farmland
Oh, wow.
outside Mumbai, and we have started growing our own.
So you're growing your own produce for this?
Growing our own produce. We wouldn't get the crop that quickly, but there will be right step in the right direction.
So there's actually a farm to table concept happening at the NRI.
Absolutely.
That's
So that's what we are aiming to do, and we'll continue to do, and we'll evolve there.
So talking of upgrading and learning, this curry leaf tip was pretty interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some more tips from Chef Atul, and what I'm going to talk to you about is that how to make Indian food more interesting in a party. So, some tips in terms of presenting food in a manner which will excite friends, rather than always going in for a risotto or a rosti or some yakitori pork ribs or things like that. So how to present Indian food in a more interesting way. So look for that in the next tip, and I hope you enjoyed the chat.